Hi, this is take two. I'm a little frustrated with myself because I read these books a few days ago, the books I'm about to review, and I had this like specific thought about one of them that I thought would be really fun to share, and then I was like, I should probably write this down on a sticky note. And then I was like, nah, I'll remember it. I don't remember it, so oh well. If you don't know, these book videos are very, very unscripted. I don't have the time in my life to write a script. I barely have the time to make these videos at all. So they're a little, they're whatever they're going to be is kind of the thing I have to accept. Anyways, moving on. I have another set of library books. I can't remember if it's 8 or 9. We'll see. From the picture books from the library, and I'm going to rate them. Well, not rate them, review them, but starting from my least favorite and going up towards my most favorite. All right, well, let's get into it. This book, the first one I have here, is called Migrants by Issa Watanabe. I'm thinking that's how I'm pronouncing that name. It could be Issa, but it's got 2 S's, so I want to say Issa. Yeah, this is an interesting book, but it left me confused, which is almost like the worst thing that a book can do to me. I feel like almost more than bore me. Well, maybe boring is worse, but it's pretty close up there. Is confusing me. If a book, like, even especially if a book has some potential and then like just leaves me being like, what's going on, and like having to like go back and like breaking the flow of my reading, I don't like that. And this book did that for me, if you can call it reading, since it is a wordless book. There are words on the back that don't clarify the story. They kind of just recap the parts of the story that are easier to understand. Says the migrants must leave the forest. Borders are crossed, sacrifices made, loved ones are lost. It takes such courage to reach the end. At last the journey is over and the migrants arrive. This is the new place. That's that's the text that the book has to offer. The book opens on these images of this skull child kind of character on this kind of like ibis type. Am I pronouncing that bird's name right? Anyways, this bird companion. And I want to think that is some sort of metaphor for death. She comes up behind these migrant animal people. So perhaps, death is coming up behind them or something. But her interactions throughout the story, I don't think very clearly communicate that she's a symbol for death. So although she's the only one that's not an animal-headed character, she might be just another person, or she might be death. I don't really know. Anyways, here she is. I'll run through the book pretty quickly and just kind of show you the moments that confused me, and you'll get an idea for what I'm talking about for its confusingness. Just like I think it's a special challenge when you have a book without pictures to communicate the story without any confusion, and I just feel like this one fell flat for me. So she's coming up, and there's this little bag on the ground. I feel like the fact that she's coming up upon it means that it's clearly not hers. In this picture, she's carrying it. In this picture, she seems to be offering it to the crowd. But then, for the rest of the book, she is simply carrying it. So I guess maybe she tried to offer it to them, and it wasn't any of theirs, so she gets to keep it, or maybe it was hers, and I'm not really clear on that. They make camp here, and they sleep. This is, that's a sequitur. I understand that. And then suddenly, there's this shot of the Skullgirl giving some plant to this polar bear. This polar bear, I think, is the same polar bear that was shown 2 pages ago, 3 pages ago. Visible here 3 pages ago, but that polar bear is wearing clothes and standing on 2 feet, and is not pictured on these 2 pages, whereas on this page he's suddenly back and on 4 feet and not wearing clothes. So is that the same polar bear? I'm actually not super sure. I do notice that the flowers are changing color from pink to gray over here, so maybe she is doing some death-related thing. Anyways, on the very next page, there's simply this shot of them walking down. Can you even see in the light? Walking. There's this hill here, and they're walking towards the hill. I don't really know what was supposed to be happening on this page and how it connects to this, but here they are now. And I guess that hill must have led to water, because here they are running down that hill. It didn't show water at the bottom of that hill, but here they are running down the hill to water now, into a boat. A boat that they're riding on the very next page, and then on this page, the boat does seem to have broken, so I guess that's pretty clear. Sorry, I bumped my mic there. And here they make it to the other side, so I guess that makes sense. And here one of their own has fallen ill or perhaps straight up died. I'm not sure. So most of the story makes some sense. Here she is holding the rabbit. So again, maybe she is death, but maybe she's just mourning them too. Here's the polar bear again. So if the polar bear's interaction with the girl before was supposed to be some metaphor for his death, I guess I was wrong about that. If I was wondering whether maybe that was what was going on, but I guess it wasn't, because the polar bear is here. And then here they come across another change in the flowers. So maybe that represents finding the, the promised land. Maybe was that polar bear page out of place? It feels like they left a pink land to go to the gray plant land, and now they're back in a pink land again. But the other page that we had showing the difference between the gray plants and the pink plants was right in the middle of the story. And that's the end. I mean, I guess that's the new place that was mentioned in the back of the book. Anyways, you see what I mean? I mean, maybe I'm just dumb, but I'm having trouble interpreting this, and it made it so that for me, I was doing less, looking at the pictures and admiring them and then moving forward, and more just that breaks my understanding of what was going on. What's going on? And flipping back, which that's not my preferred reading experience, So despite the lovely artwork, that is why I rated it a little bit lower today. Man, that tea is good. I made some good tea today. All right, this one is Thank You, Miyuki by Roxanne Marie Galliez and illustrated, I believe, by Sang Sun Ratanavan, which I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. You may remember I have previously reviewed another book by this pair about the same character, Miyuki, called Patience Miyuki. I actually should have gone back and looked at what I said about that so I could compare them, but I didn't, and now here I am, unscripted, talking about this book. And I guess if you want to, you could compare my thoughts, but it's probably not that interesting, because I don't have that much to say about this book. Once again, I know that I said this last time too, the art is gorgeous, for sure. No complaints about the art. Lots of beautiful colors, lots of very careful, detailed work. This story, the reason it's ranked kind of low for me is, aside from the fact that I think this is a non-Japanese author, very much using Japanese aesthetics to create, an aesthetic paradise without necessarily having anything to do with Japanese culture, which is just, You decide how much you care about that, but it's always a little bit it's a little distracting for me, I think, would be the best way to put it. Although the art is gorgeous, I can't deny that. But the story itself is a bit repetitive on top of that. So Miyuki finds her grandfather sitting here. This is so dark. Can I adjust the lighting? Is that lighting any better? I kind of like that lighting a little bit better. So yeah, she finds her grandfather sitting here in, I guess, a giant cup. And she asks him what he's doing, and he says that he's meditating. And then, I don't know, maybe this is supposed to be for younger readers, and that's my problem or something. But then the rest of the book becomes this kind of repetitive feeling thing where it's just example after example of them meditating while Miyuki asks, when are we going to meditate? And her grandfather just straight up ignores her. And then at the end, he reveals that all of the things that we were doing were meditating, which I think might be a story that would have more impact if you didn't realize that all of those things were meditating. But of course, I did, and I think most adult readers at least would realize that those things are meditating. So I guess this is perhaps intended for younger people who don't understand what meditating is, or maybe older people who have no idea what meditating is at all. But still, since it doesn't feel like that much of a narrative, and it feels more like a series of scenes that are all kind of communicating the same concept, it does come across as a little bit repetitive to me. Or perhaps, if you were in the right mood, it would come across as meditative. I suppose that might be more of the intent. But I guess it doesn't feel meditative to me, mostly because there's a lot of dialogue, and it feels... I mean, this is nitpicky, but it feels like fretful dialogue to me. A lot of it is just Miyuki asking, when do we meditate? When do we meditate? Which is a little bit... It doesn't make the book feel very meditative, because in spite of the fact that the book claims that they've been meditating the whole time, it kind of feels like the grandfather has been, and Miyuki maybe has been, obsessed with the idea of meditation and looking forward to the future of that, and not actually being very present in the moment because of all of her constant questioning. Yeah, so, I don't know. The writing's fine. It's kind of just meandering over their day as they do, calm, meditative things. They look at the clouds, and they catch raindrops in their mouth and that sort of thing. I feel like this book is certainly notable for the art, but I've said about all I can say about the story because there isn't too much of one, and it just kind of feels... really ironically, I feel like what I don't like about the story is that even regardless of its subject, the writing did not feel restful to me. It felt restless to me, and that made for a not very comfortable reading experience, personally. This one's called A Mystery in the Forest by Susanna Isern, and illustrated, I think. Man, they always do this. They don't say illustrated by, they just put the name second, and I have to assume it's the illustrator. Excuse me. Anyways, I believe it's illustrated by Daniel Montero Galan, or maybe it's Danielle Montero Galan. I didn't realize this until I got this book, but this actually says it's the delightful characters from the hugely successful book The Lonely Mailman return. So this is sort of a sequel, I guess, but I have not read the original one. And, pardon me. I want to drink some of that before it gets cold, Unfortunately, the most notable thing about this book is the paper quality. Honestly, it might be worth it for you to try and find a copy of this book just so you can feel the paper, because it's weird. It says here this book is printed on stone paper that is silver cradle-to-cradle certified, which I'm not sure what that means. It's super, super heavy. I mean, it almost has a plasticky or more like vellum-like texture. In fact, since the book is about a deer, my initial thought was, did they make a book about a deer and print it on vellum? That'd be kind of weird, right? Well, I guess they don't make modern vellum out of deerskin anymore. But originally, right, vellum was deerskin. It's so heavy, which isn't very much like vellum. But the texture is kind of plasticky and slightly, almost like, well, it does kind of feel like stone, right? That like smooth, stony feeling that vellum has too, I think. But the weight of it, really what it feels like is like it's waterlogged paper. If you've ever turned the pages on a waterlogged book, that's the weight of this. It's weird. And it's kind of distracting, but also admittedly somewhat sensorially pleasurable just to turn the pages of this book. The first half of the book covers this like anthropomorphized deer character seen here. Ever since that Adventure Time episode, I just have a problem with anthropomorphized deers. They kind of creep me out, but that's purely personal. There's nothing inherently creepy about this. It just follows him going on his day, through the different seasons, what he, like the things he harvests, the plants he harvests during different seasons. He's a cook, so here he is cooking, and it's kind of all about his cooking, and he, all throughout this little woodland village, they all like come and share in the treat. Ultimately, this story is one that feels like it has a bit of a moral about basically having empathy for people, even when they are, the kind of empathy where you have empathy for people when they are mean to you because they are mean to you because some unfortunate thing that they're going through. He comes home one day and his kitchen is totally trashed and all of his forest harvesting spots are destroyed, and there's this weird scene about these mice going crazy because they're eating really bad pie. And that's how he discovers that his recipe book has been stolen by his rabbit neighbor. Although it's somewhat jarring, I actually really do appreciate the writing on this page. I'll read it to you. Deer walks around the house. In the back, he finds Rabbit reading his secret recipe book with a worried expression on his face. "Hey, that's mine!" shouts Deer angrily. "I just wanted to," begins Rabbit, seeing the furious expression on Deer's face. "You've been following me. You've damaged the forest and you've gone into my house without permission," Deer bellows. "I'm not surprised you're always alone." "But I thought that if I could make a yummy pie, then more people would come to see me. I thought I could be like you," says Rabbit, who then bursts into tears. Deer, inarguably our protagonist here, is just straight up so mean. I just love that they go so far as to have him say, "I'm not surprised you're always alone." That's so cruel. And I think it's there to very dramatically demonstrate the contrast of like the example of the lack of empathy for somebody who, yes, has done horrible things, trashed your kitchen, stolen your stuff, but done it out of a place of insecurity and sort of misguided desire to be more like you, I guess. Um, Anyways, Deer is very angry, and I appreciate the harshness of that anger and its depiction. It's not softened, so that's cool. And then, he kind of like comes around and like realizes that Rabbit just needs help, and so he invites Rabbit to be his assistant in cooking. I really didn't need to go on about the plot for that long, because it's not that interesting to me. I do appreciate once again that moment of genuine anger that is expressed here, but me, I don't like lessons in my picture books, and I do kind of feel like this comes dangerously close to just feeling more like it's in service of this sort of message about empathy, which I'm all for a message about empathy, right? But if the story feels like it's just there to like carry that rather than that message of empathy kind of carrying the story or just being a part of an otherwise entertaining story, I would prefer the story to feel like it would stand on its own without a lesson, and then if lessons are in there, for them to be sort of heavily incorporated and almost unnoticeable, so you just kind of like, you understand them by the end of the story, but you don't feel like you're being told a lesson, which I do feel like I'm being told a lesson in this story, and I think it's partially because the story itself, it's kind of by the numbers, in my opinion, and a little bit dull. So, I don't know. I probably won't read The Lost Mailman, unfortunately, but it was hugely popular, so maybe it's good. Felix and the Monsters by Josh and Monica Holtzclaw. So, are they a couple then? We've got a few books in today's pile today. I often talk about this thing. I'll critique a book as having sort of that, Pixar or DreamWorks animation concept artist picture book style. And here you will see why I'm justified in making that critique so often, because I actually do have 3 books that I would say that about this week, and they are all by Pixar or DreamWorks animation concept artists or animators. And this is one of those books, and it's definitely got that style. This could be... I feel like this could be concept art for Trolls or something, although I don't know which studio. This is... this person worked on Cars 3, Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4, and Soul, and also did a bunch of stuff for Laika, so that's interesting. Anyways, once again, this story is just it's just a lesson about empathy, packaged up a little bit, themed a little bit. It's got that sort of like... I'm sorry, I'm so cynical. Like kitschy, like attempt at humor that I feel like I do associate with a lot of these modern animation films for children, where it's like a medieval like Dungeons and Dragons-esque, like there's like castle guards versus monsters, but the castle guard plays a guitar because haha, that's juxtaposition and kitschy and funny, I guess, but. I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. I'm so cynical. I'm sorry. It's really not that deep. I was a little bit entertained by the fact that at first I kind of thought that that these guard things, because they don't look like humans in those guard suits, right? I kind of thought like maybe there was a species that was guards. That's not really the case. But it was a funny idea that was kind of suggested to me by the art. So that was kind of honestly the main good thing I can say about this book. There's like, I don't know, it's just a boring story. Like look, if I came up to you and I was elevator pitching a book and I was like, okay, I've got this idea. There's a bunch of guards on one side of a wall and a bunch of monsters on the other side of the wall, and one of the guards doesn't fit in. You see, he wants to play music and not just guard all the time, but the other guards say, hey, you should just be guarding all the time. But then the guy hears music, and it turns out that the monsters on the other side of the wall play music, and so he goes over there and he actually learns that the monsters are good guys, and he makes friends with them because they get him because he plays music and they play music. And then they play such beautiful music that they convince the stuck-up guards that actually guarding is not important, and they take the wall down. The end. Like, would you really be like, wow, yeah, make that into a kid's book? What an awesome idea. I mean, I guess it's conceptually tight, but it's conceptually tight because it's so predictable, and like, I just feel like I've heard that story a million times in other forms, and it feels like, yeah, I get it. Like, you know, appreciate other people's differences. Like, good message, right? Once again, like, good message. I don't have any problem with suggesting that message or communicating that message because it's a positive message. But like, it just kind of feels like when it's that obvious, when it's like, oh yeah, I get it, like that's the message. And that's my first takeaway from reading your story, rather than like reading the story and being entertained and being taken along for a journey or a little adventure, or like being entranced by the beauty of the scenery and the writing, and then like at the end being like, wait a second, was that, I just realized that book was also about said message or whatever, right? Like, that's the experience I want. I want to be caught up. In this, I feel like I'm outside the book looking in. And I feel like the only way that you can get away with that kind of dull writing is like if you're writing for little kids. And just because you can get away with doing that kind of writing for little kids doesn't mean that like it's good enough. I don't think it is. I think that we owe kids the best kind of writing we can do. Like writing that holds up despite whatever the age of the reader is. So, wow, I got a little angrier about this book than I thought I was going to. But yeah, that's my critique. What else can I say about the book? I summed up that whole story in that little pseudo elevator pitch, and there's nothing else interesting to say. The character designs are not that exciting to me. The end. I'm sorry. All right, this one is called Once Upon a Dragon's Fire by Beatrice Blue, and this one is another like DreamWorks concept artist person, I think. This not a studio artist though, a visual development artist and freelance illustrator who has worked with a variety of clients, including DreamWorks. It does kind of have that style, you know, that like that undeniably appealing, but kind of I've seen it a lot before kind of style. So you know, it kind of evens itself out. I don't have a problem with it. There's this book takes place in a sort of like a mixed like European fantasy / Chinese inspired setting. I kind of like these scenes where they've got all these books, because it looks like these books are like handmade or handwritten, almost like tied together with, you know, like loose paper that was found around the place. I don't know. So there's some fun set design, I suppose. But anyways, actually conceptually this story is really interesting, and I'll just try and sum it up here from memory. So basically, this is it takes place in a mythical land before there was any fire, and so everything's very cold all the time, and people tend to blame the cold on the storms that they believe are caused by this dragon that lives up in the mountains, and they fear this dragon. But these two kids are obsessed with this dragon, and when one storm particularly causes trouble for them, seeing as they have no fire to warm themselves back up, these two children decide to venture off into the snowy mountains to find that dragon and take care of it for once and for all in order to get rid of these cold storms. However, it turns out that the dragon itself is scared and cold, and actually isn't a threat at all. And they immediately recognize, I suppose because it's just cute, that it's not dangerous, and they kind of make friends with it. And then they realize that, you know, there's all these stories down in the valley about this horrible dragon, and how are they going to change it? So they decide to you know, come up with their own story to communicate to the villagers that the dragon is not dangerous. And the nice thing conceptually to me is that it's all kind of ties up neatly with the themes. The story that they tell about how great the dragon is, or how not dangerous it is at least, actually warms the dragon's heart, because it moves the dragon. Hearing the children's story moves the dragon and warms its heart, and its heart actually, its emotions create the first fire that this world has ever known. And this is what it then uses to like fly through the world and warm the world and bring fire to the world, and warmth subsequently to the world. And then it's kind of suggested that, you know, by continuing to like tell positive stories, by continuing to tell positive stories about the dragon, they further fuel the warmth of their world. You know, I don't want to try and recap why, but I feel like you can kind of tell from that this is just this kind of tight circular like set of themes, you know, with the cold, fire, dragon stories about the dragon, cold, like bad stories about the dragon, nice stories about the dragon, warming the heart, fire, warming the world. It all kind of really wraps up really nicely. So I thought that was pretty good, and for that reason, this is probably my neutral book for the week. There's this giant fold out here where the dragon gets warmed. Surprisingly, all of the villagers down in the village below see the dragon breathing fire coming down from the mountain and are like, yay! I guess the reason that I wouldn't rate this higher is because it just kind of, in spite of the concept being really good, the writing itself is just a little bit flat to me. I feel like it says everything in kind of a very default feeling, like straightforward way. I kind of would have been interested in a little bit more detail about the world, perhaps, because the world is potentially interesting here. I know that I've read books that have done that, where just the way that a sentence is said, it's said in such a way that you pick up something about the world in the process. This book didn't do that. It just feels very stripped down. It feels like maybe it had an editor that was like, you know, just say what needs to be said, and keep it really, really straightforward. And in that, I do feel that there was a bit of life lost. I'm not saying I know that that's what happened, but that's what it feels like happened, you know? This book is called Wolfboy by Andy Harkness, and I do believe, yes, this is another, this is a Disney and Sony Pictures Animation Studio animator, again. The good thing about this book, and this is probably my other neutral book this week, the good thing about this book is definitely the art. So the art is this really fascinating clay sculpture type stuff. The moon was full. Here it is. It's a big disc of swirly clay. Colors are really nice. You've got these muted browns for the forest, and the bright blue for the wolf, or the wolf boy. I guess he's not really a wolf. His head is kind of triangular, but I think that's his whiskers, not his muzzle. He doesn't actually have a nose of any kind. I mean, I could spend all day going through these pictures with you because they're just so fun. There's just some really enjoyable detail in this clay stuff, and it has this. I just don't know if I've ever seen a book that was like illustrated entirely with clay sculpture before, and it's all like flat clay sculpture, like clearly like done on a tabletop and then photographed from above, kind of. Which I think is even more a level of. I feel like if there were a clay book, I would have thought it would be like, you know, 3D, like full clay sculptures. But the fact that this is like flat illustrations done with clay, it's really interesting, and the color is so cool to boot. The story itself, the book is just a setup for a subversion of expectations. It's about a wolf who is, you know, hungry and growly and drooly and huffy and all of these adverbs. Not adverbs. I guess they're just adjectives, actually. But it spends every page doing that. He was hungry and huffy and drooly and growly. Is that pretty repetitive? He was hungry and huffy and drooly and growly and fussy. I guess it adds a new adjective each time it repeats it. He's very hungry and he's looking for rabbits. You know what I mean? And it is clearly trying to set you up to believe that he's going to eat these rabbits, but then in the end it turns out that he wants to have a feast with the rabbits, and he's just looking for them so they can start their feast. So a little subversion of expectations, and that is the whole body of that's the meat of the book, is that concept right there. Other than that, there's no story. Holy smokes, this thing is repetitive. He stomped through the trees, he was hungry. Rabbits, rabbits, where are you? But they're nowhere to be found. He splashed through the murky creek, he was hungry and huffy, you know, adding things. Rabbits, rabbits, where are you? He climbed up a creaky old oak, he was hungry and huffy and drooly, he needed rabbits, 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 where are you? So every single page, all it does is it says where he's walking, and then it adds another adjective to the list, and then it says rabbits, rabbits, where are you? And it does that for the whole book until like the last 3 pages. And I almost get the sense that it's really just that all these extra pages are really only there to create more settings so that there can be more of this gorgeous artwork. Which, like, yeah, I do want more of this gorgeous artwork, so I guess I'm glad that they did that. But no, because, like, you could have made all this gorgeous artwork and had the setting change every page, but also injected actual story into it that justified why he's going to all these different places in an interesting way. But instead it just says that he's going there, adds another adjective, and says that he's looking. So the effect is that although the art is nice, the story is, he looked for rabbits. 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 He found rabbits. Boring. You know? Just not enough. All right, this book is called The Old Woman by Joanne Schwartz and Nahid Kazemi, which is the illustrator. This book is really charming. Here's, I'm fairly predictable. I just like my books to not have a lesson or a moral. This book doesn't. It's very meandering, but in a way that I really like, because it's more. I feel like if you wanted Thank You Miyuki to be good, this book is actually more what you might have been looking for, because it's pretty much just meditative. It's extremely a slice of life, simply following an old woman on her day where she takes a walk with her dog. It really zooms in on the details. It almost feels like we're following every step and just really appreciating the present moment of going on this walk with this old woman. She is taking it slow. She's really observing her surroundings. She's not just seeing what's around her, but she's also connecting it to memories and emotions, and it's all done with this very thoughtful art style that feels like it just really feels like it's pouring over the the scene at hand, and yeah, it really brings you into the moment. I thought it was great, and the art is fun too, because it's very soft around the edges and almost blurred, which kind of, to me, reading this book, I did start to get a little paranoid that maybe what was happening is that we were getting ready to have the old woman die at the end, because it has this very the illustrations make it feel like the world is almost fading out a little bit with all these muted colors and blurred smudgy lines. And then the story itself, she's reminiscing so much while at the same time simply just appreciating life as it is. And you get the sense that maybe, she's kind of reached her zenith of she's learned to appreciate everything, and she's happy to just take whatever comes. And that sort of feels like it's priming you for her dying and having that not be a terrifying thing. But she doesn't die in the end. I think that the strength of this book comes from the illustrations are charming. Look at that adorable dog. But a lot of the charm of this book just comes from the actual specific wording. Let's see if I can find one that I particularly like. I liked the wording of this page. The harvest moon rose slowly, and suddenly it was there, taking her breath away. What was that word? Magnificent. It was magnificent. And it was so orange, or sort of a rusty color. She thought about how to describe it. Huge, looming, warm, gentle, enormous, dreamy, peaceful, autumnal, magnificent. It just feels really real to me. The repetition of the word magnificent, the really like searching for words kind of feeling of the writing, and kind of the casual wording, and it was so orange, or sort of a rusty color. It feels very conversational almost, and I think that adds to this sort of, you just really feel like you're hanging out with this old woman, and that's pretty much all there is. But I thought there was a lot of beauty in that. It's well done. It's well written. And if you can have that simple concept, but really expand upon it and explore it and have it be well written and just enjoyable to experience, that's great. My tea is cold. This book is called Howl, written by Kat Patrick and illustrated by Evie Barrow. The character designs and illustrations in this book are so charming. It's got this, I would want to say watercolor pencil style. I'll find a better picture, I guess. There's sort of a wonky but dramatic perspective to a lot of the illustrations, or maybe just this one, but I particularly love this page. It's like, I love when people have the bravery to have dramatic perspective, but at the same time aren't super specific about making it perfectly line up with all the lines. Has this wonky, drifty, liquid kind of feeling to it, like it's a warping dream world, or maybe just warping in the sun like this old fence is. The whole world is kind of sagging and waving, and it feels alive, and I really like it. And here's a great example of I feel like so often when you see these people do these lots of little strokes to build up their world of plants and stuff, it does kind of seem like sometimes a lot of artists seem impatient. They don't want to finish it, or they just want to do the bare bones. This artist feels like they took their time, really enjoyed what they were doing, thought about how it was going to look, and was carefully constructing a world out of these lines. The color is great. And yeah, the moments where the watercolor kind of blends the line and when it's left sketchy or rough is I think really enjoyable, and it just feels so vibrant. I like how pale the ground is and how bright the child is on the surface there. There's a lot to enjoy about the art, and that just continues. Well, yeah, I feel like this sort of wonky but bold perspective is you can see that in a lot of different illustrations. I feel like you can see it on this page too. So exciting for me to look at. And what a charming character design. I just love this kid. Super charming. Those nice big bold eyes and nice little details like these salt and pepper shakers. So cute. And then the story is really sweet. And this is a little bit of a personal thing. I like werewolves. I'm a fan of werewolves. I think they're cool. And this book turns out to be like a surprise werewolf book. But it really also reminded me of growing up in my family, especially in the years when my family were all homeschooling, and I have a bunch of siblings that all lived together. And there was a lot of nights that where we just kind of realized that because we didn't have a set schedule to life, because we were homeschooled, because our mother was a stay-at-home mom, we could kind of build our own schedule and be sensitive to our own feelings of the day and change the day accordingly. And there's a vibe of that in this book. So again, this speaks to a lot of very personal things, but I also feel like I could suggest that it would be fun to other people as well. So this is the crux of the story, is this concept. The moon was so bright through the windows, no one wanted to sleep. Maggie almost exploded, and so did Mom. So, everybody's just, it's nighttime, everybody's supposed to be sleeping, but everybody's awake because the moon's just too bright. And they're, so she's throwing a tantrum, she doesn't want to sleep. There's just a lot of, there's those nights where it's just, this isn't a sleeping night, you know what I mean? And it could have been a story about the conflict that's there, but instead it's a story about accepting that and being like, you know what, some nights just aren't sleeping nights. Anyways, to top it all, Maggie's two front teeth decided it was the right time to fall out, and this is the moment where you start to be like, what's going on? But after lights out, two small fangs grew back in their place. She could touch their sharpness with her tongue. Now, you can see in the illustrations, and this is a very interesting example of illustrations and words working together, because in this case, rather than supporting each other, the illustrations and the words contradict each other to some extent, and that really does add something to the story. You realize that this is kind of, that a lot of the story that's in the words is actually taking place sort of in the imagination. But you can get away with understanding that that's not literal, even though the text is taking it literally, because the pictures aren't taking it literally, and so you get the point, and that's really fun. So she doesn't have fangs in the picture, but the text says that she has grown fangs, and she sprouted itchy little hairs. Her ears felt extra pointy, and her hands curled into paws. It's showing that she's just normal, but you can see the wolfish shadow forming behind her that suggests that, oh, this is her imagination. She's feeling as though she's turning into a werewolf, and she runs out into the yard under the moonlight and expresses her wolfishness. And then I was worried that this was a story where we were just going to have this like kind of hard to read like conflict between mother and daughter, because the mother was going to be like, how dare you? But the very next page, meanwhile, through the kitchen window, a cold bit of moonlight spilled onto Mom's toe. Slowly, it covered her whole foot. Mom felt a little strange. Then, stranger still, her nose twitched and her teeth sharpened. Something tickled her throat. Mom began to have wolfish thoughts. If I am a mom, she howled, then I'm also a wolf. Whoo! And so the mom also transforms into a werewolf. And that turns it into this, like, really pleasant, like, story about a fun bonding moment where, in a moment of potential conflict, the mom and daughter actually decide that they were both upset, and the upsetness is the problem, not each other. And they just kind of decide to like subvert their plans for the night of like trying to force each other to sleep, and instead just go with the feeling and have fun together. And so they go into the backyard and howl together under the moon and have fun and get their yayas out and get their anger out, and get their frustrations out and get their restlessness out. And in the end, doing so makes them feel peaceful and connected and bonded and also sleepy. And so they're able to go to sleep. And I just love that arc. I just thought it was so charming. I like the werewolf theming. Love the way that the art supports the pictures, and the pictures support. Sorry, the writing supports the pictures, and the pictures support the writing by contradicting each other, which is so interesting. I feel like this is a really good example of a lot of innovative little moments that can be had in children's books, and it reminded me of some pleasant moments from my youth. So I like that a lot. My last book for the day is Invent a Pet by Vicky Fong. Could be Fang, but I think it's Vicky Fong. Illustrated by Tidewan Taipinarong. I hope I'm saying that all right. This book, I will admit, has a fairly personal appeal. If you know me, you know that I am a geek about monsters and creatures, any made-up animals. I have a massive collection of made-up animal books, which I actually would kind of like to showcase on this channel, so I might do that later. And I have other books that are similar to this one. Specifically, I'm thinking of No Plain Pets. I think that's a Henrik Drescher book. I'll put it up here in case I'm wrong, or regardless. But yeah, No Plain Pets, a book about a child who wants a pet but doesn't want a normal one. That's how this book begins. And I really love... I'll go into it. Okay, so it starts out with this basic premise of the child wants a pet, but they don't want all the normal pets, a dog, cat, a rabbit, a goldfish. They don't want all the normal pets that everybody always has. They want a strange pet, and so they go home disappointed. But then their mom, one day she came home to find a strange and magnificent machine in her living room. Dear Katie, hope this helps in your quest to find an extraordinary pet. Love, Mom. Her mom gives her a machine that makes her pets, which is so fun. She inputs things into the input slots at the top of the machine, and then they kind of, she puts a soccer ball in here, and this like slot machine style shows the soccer ball. She puts grass in here, and it shows grass. She puts carrot in here, and it shows carrot on this little slot machine type thing, and then out comes this round green rabbit, and you get the sense that what she puts into the machine, creates creatures. And I feel like a normal book would have kind of stopped the concept there and maybe just explored it in a repetitive fashion where, just kind of like, hey, if you put random things in here, you get a combination of those things as a pet. That's kind of where I thought this was going. But it turns out there's actually a specific system behind which slot adds what qualities to the animal. And the bulk of this book is actually just a really, I think surprisingly, well, I don't know, I would call it subtle exploration of sort of the scientific process. And I call it subtle simply because it never really outs itself as that's what it's being about. It doesn't say that this is a book about the scientific process. It doesn't say have that moment where she's like, then she remembered the scientific process. Here is what that is. And then, it doesn't feel like a demonstration. It doesn't tie itself to any kind of real world thing. But just through the mechanism of this very creative, fantasy story, this child does utilize the scientific process, and that is the bulk of the book. She sees all these different creatures that are coming out of the machine, and she starts to take notes, and she wants to figure out how the machine determines what creature is going to come out. She says, I will figure out what each input does and find the formula for my perfect pet. She started with a new set of inputs, a cushion, a sock, and a banana. A rainbow-spotted monkey. Now, what if I change just the first item? So then she goes through and she does experimentation. She gets her control, and then she she changes just one thing at a time to see what changes about each creature as she changes one slot at a time, so that she can figure out which slot does what. And through this really surprising method, it does communicate like scientific process or process of elimination or something like that. To children, and in the process you get to see all sorts of cool, crazy animals. And I believe, as a child and as a reader who's interested in made-up animals, I also then get to imagine, or the reader might get to imagine, what you would put in and what you might get out, because now you understand the actual mechanism of the machine. It's not just some mysterious fantasy machine that does whatever. It doesn't simply combine all of the items into a thing. It has a method. Anyway, so that's the bulk of the book, and I found that really fascinating. That's not where I expected this story to go, and it was so fun. And then in the process, she ends up making tons and tons of crazy fantasy animals, because she has to run all of these different tests in order to understand the machine. She has so many fantasy animals that in the end she gives away all these fantasy animals to the people in her village, and that's when she realizes that now those crazy fantasy animals are normal because everybody has one. So now she can get just a standard goldfish, and it is extraordinary. It's out of the ordinary now, which I thought was a really nice way to tie the beginning of the story into the end of the story. It really felt like a round, tight little package that was that really naturally incorporated this, what would have otherwise felt like a lesson about, like, here's how, process of elimination or study or, or the scientific method works. It that just felt like a crucial, logical, natural part of this story that was created by the setting and the themes that were important to the the concept of extraordinary versus not extraordinary pets that she wants. It all felt really tight and entertaining as heck, and happened to speak to a few of my personal interests. So yeah, so fun. And the illustrations are charming enough. I wasn't as much of a fan of the illustrating as I was of the writing, but they're cute enough. I feel like could have maybe had some cooler creatures as long as you're making made up creatures, but still fun. So yeah, Invent a Pet. I love this book, and this is my top pick for this week. So with that, I'm all done. I hope that in all of my rambling, non-scripted madness, you got some interesting takes on those books. Anyways, wow, this video is longer than I expected. How many books was that for this much time? Anyways, see you later. Bye.